Hey folks, we're starting this video with a slow motion of the front and the sides to the back of the 1963 C2 Roadster. So just take a moment and enjoy the view, and then we'll get into the review of the car.
See if you don't think this is the most exciting car in America today. Know what makes this car so exciting besides its obvious style? It's the Corvette's not-so-obvious engineering. The things you feel but don't see. The things that led Car Life magazine to award Corvette its coveted Engineering Excellence Award. Here's what Car Life magazine says about the Corvette Stingray. The Stingray has a chassis and suspension system years ahead of contemporary sedans. Bold in concept, thoroughly tested, meticulously manufactured. Handling has been vastly improved. The car is much more stable at any speed and thus safer. Chevrolet engineers assigned to the Corvette project have done an outstanding job. We unanimously vote them Car Life's 1963 Award for Engineering Excellence. The fact is, the Corvette is a specialized machine, built for people who want the ultimate in driving. But this same spirit of engineering, this idea of special design for special needs, is true for all of Chevrolet's four entirely different kinds of cars for 63. The Chevy 2, designed for people who want practical transportation in its most luxurious package, the Chevy 2. The Corvair, an exciting blend of family car and sport car, a family sports car. The most popular of all, the 1963 Chevrolet Impala, with the jet-smooth look of luxury. Four entirely different kinds of cars, but all with the spirit of the award-winning Corvette.
Welcome back to the ColeVette Experience. Today we're going to post more about my 63. There was a comment in one of my postings from a viewer and a subscriber that wanted to learn more about the car, and so I'm getting to that content. Thank you for commenting, subscribing, and liking. So in 1963, there was about 10,000, 20,000 in total made, but about 10,000 convertibles that came out. Of the 10,000 convertibles, in a Daytona blue with red interior, 327, 300 horsepower spec, there may have been one of 63 that were produced, making it a pretty rare spec. To the National Corvettes Restorers Society, you can request a search on your car, and I was able to do so, and so I can find out the provenance of this car. So this car, production date was 6/19/1963. The dealer code was 475 and the zone was 14, which means that this was delivered to Arlington, Virginia at Rosenthal Chevrolet. And it's great that you can find this information, because then you can confirm if it's a real or perhaps just a rebuilt Corvette. And in this case, we've got the real deal. Now, using the Chilton Book Repair Tune-Up Guide for the Corvette 63 to 83, this has all the information you need not only to figure out what your car is, but how to maintain and restore it. So for this car, I know that it's a 327, 300 horsepower, but I also know I've got the CB code on the differential, making it a 336 posi traction differential. Also, when you decode the VIN is going to tell you what year, is it a convertible versus coupe, where it was, what plant it came from, and then the number sequence that it came out. And so this one is a 1, which is a 63, a 2, which is a convertible, a 3, which is St. Louis, a 4, and then the 4 is going to give the detail of the number. This one came out in about the middle of the sequence. So looking at the 327, 300 horsepower, it has this really cool snorkel air cleaner, which I believe is an amazing design for that period. Although when you first look at it, it looks a bit Star Trek-ish, which is great. But you'd learn to love it and appreciate the design that this is the more you live with the car, I believe. At first, looking at a classic or vintage muscle car, you're looking for that big, huge air cleaner that you see in most of them. And this one has a lot of character and is quite beautiful, actually. So I don't have the shroud on it now. I just want to be able to point out a few things. The distributor, the coil, alternator, fan with the clutch, and then cool enough is the single master cylinder for the braking system. I know, looks dangerous, but it works. Okay, so more about this master cylinder. One of the bespoke parts on a 63 is going to be this master cylinder and also this cap with that thumb screw. So if your car came without power brakes, it would have come with this master cylinder, and it would have come with the master cylinder with the thumb screw top, not the bolt top. The bolt top is something that came with power brake booster, and it needed to be a different locking mechanism for the cap so it would fit underneath the hood. So they changed it from thumb screw to a bolt. I'll show a picture of that. I have it because I'm going to turn this car into a power boosted single master cylinder braking system. I don't believe it came original with a power booster because I do not have the holes drilled, pre-drilled, which would be able to see underneath there. But I have no problem putting the booster on to make it a power brake car because I want to enjoy it and feel, safe while I'm doing it. Believe it or not, though, single master cylinder and disc and drum brakes. It has plenty of stopping power, and I've never had to really stop it in an emergency. But anytime I do try to stop it, I feel very safe that it's going to stop. mainly because I redid all of the brakes, so I know how to work them and how they work, but also you get that feedback from the road and it works just fine. Something I'll point out is I did all the braking system, restored it, and instead of restoring, I couldn't restore the brake lines, rather I had to replace them. So I ordered them. Believe it or not, they come pre-bent pretty much, and all you have to do is manipulate them to get them into the correct place. But if you have one of these cars, I highly suggest looking at your braking system and redoing it. It wasn't hard, it was cumbersome, and it was worth it. Okay, so looking into the interior, really haven't taken the opportunity to dress it up or clean it up. It looks just fine the way it is. I've enjoyed driving it, and I think it wears really well. I did get these floor mats, which are rubber and vintage looking. And out of the ones you can find, I think these are the best to get. They fit just fine. They're not carpet, so they won't wear. And out of the years I've had this, they still look great. All you have to do is shine them up a bit and they're back to brand new. So some more things about the bespoke interior of a 63. You see that the door cards are not like any other year. I especially like the resting pad for the elbow. Alright, some more details about the interior. There's the passenger side door card. Just if you look at the 5 parts, 6 really if you look at the elbow armrest. It's just a beautiful design. You have the 2 handles for the windows. You've got the door opener, which is just beautiful. And then you have the door lock, which is the one on top, and then you have a reflector as well below, and it's just a reflector. Also take note of the screws and how they're designed into the door card. Taking a look at the seat belts, this also has a 1-year design for the seat belts. And without getting into too much detail, this is what they look like. These seats are the original seats. It's red vinyl. And you can tell that it has some patina on the hardware. I don't plan to change that at all. Even the rocker panel covers have a lot of character. And so do the rocker panel cover. Like I said, be the door sill correction, definitely door sill, and then that's, you know, the rocker panel. Alright, so if you're wondering why the glove box is out, I'm restoring it, probably, but I wanted access to the radio and the clock. There's also parts that go underneath here to cover that with vent scoops. I've got those out as I'm going to restore those. I'm going to post a video on how to restore those, as it's similar to how I restored the dash. And if you can't tell, the dash looks pretty amazing. That video will follow. The cluster, I just posted the video on how I restored the cluster. If you're a purist for 63, you might notice that there are these chrome accents that shouldn't be there. And for whatever reason at the time, I decided to tape them up and not paint them. And I'm not getting judged, but if I was getting judged, I would touch that up and paint those black. This has a Hurst Shifter. It came with the car, and it's the conversion that you would have gotten 70s, 80s for this car because it's curved. So it's vintage and it has its own value in its own right. The cue ball that's on top is much bigger than the OEM shifter knob, and I rather like the way that feels. I've got the original and I don't appreciate it as much, but once I put back to the original, see if I can upgrade with some sort of adapter to keep that ball The console, original console, it is beat up a little bit, and I will restore that at some point. But I do like the way it looks now. There is this molding piece that goes around. It's a very hard piece to find for any year, but for this one particularly, and it is very expensive. I searched for a year or so and I finally found one that was an incredible price, and I purchased it as soon as possible so they wouldn't figure out that they were charging the wrong price for it. I did post a video on how I put sound deadening and heat barrier, and you can still see some of that back there. Underneath the carpet is jute, and then the carpet. I'll put a posting out on that. But again, the reason why the glove box isn't here is that I can get access. I have a part to fix on the heater box that is cracked. Happens to be this part. And I'll need to do some fiberglass work to get it on, as the connector or connecting part for the screws is cracked off. May have been for many years. So in an earlier video, I geeked out about these hubcaps, and I want to give a good representation of what my car and these hubcaps look like. It could use another shining, but in its current state, they're still shine as much as they possibly can. Okay, more engine bay. I have the original horns. They sound terrible. I'll have to rebuild them. But they too are a thing of beauty. Alright, so I'll end this up with more details on the cluster. So from the video of restoring it, you can see now how it sits in the car. And it looks fantastic. You'll also know that there's only about 500 miles on the odometer since I've rebuilt the motor and the cluster. Point out all the horrible red paint that's on this car, and I can't wait to get it back to Daytona blue. That in its own right is going to be a Herculean effort, but I look forward to it. Also, what you haven't seen so far is I restored the steering column. When I got it, it was black, painted over the red, and over time I noticed that the red was shining through, and that it was originally red. When I looked at the spec of the 63, the steering wheel column is supposed to match the paint of the interior. Also, I restored these parts. These help hide the mechanism for the convertible top, and they come with some very expensive hardware. Just that silver part there, or chromed part there, was extremely hard to find and extremely expensive. Whether it was original or reproduction, unbelievably expensive. The convertible top also has these, some hardware on it. There, and then up here. It's on both sides, of course. And it's for the convertible top and or the hard top. Alright, and all that's in the boot is the convertible top, which is in very good shape with the original hardware. I keep a pillow here to keep the window nice and protected, and just have some extra parts for when I'm finishing out the car laying in the back. Especially my favorite car cover. It's one of the car covers that form to the car. point out in their interior that the seats in the 63 are bespoke as well. They have a seat back that is different than any of the other seat backs in the series, and I'll post a picture of what it looks like. It is a very beautiful design, the way it comes together at the top. Not to say that the 64 through 67 aren't, but again, another reason to make this a prototype year, and not just a prototype car. Not only does the seat look good, but it has this lumbar bolstering, or lumbar support, not really bolstering you, but it supports your lumbar perfectly. There's no headrest on this. I think you can retrofit it. In 67 there was a headrest, but I'll just say, like, the way this feels on your lower back is spot on. I don't think they were thinking orthopedics or lumbar spine back in those days. It definitely is a bit of a racing seat design. If you look at the racing Ferraris of the period and most racing cars, vintage racing cars at the time, these seats will resemble that. From time to time, I will slip out of first gear. I believe that's first an adjustment to the linkage, and then maybe a rebuild of the transmission for that first gear synchro. And if that's the case, I'll post all that rebuild. I will do it myself. I've researched it. The gear parts are available, and putting it back together would be exactly as you took it apart. And there are many videos out there featuring how to do this as well. I'll post a link of my favorite if I actually have to do that. Earlier I mentioned we've got 3 36 gears in the back, and they are more for a highway driving experience. They do snap you around as much as you want them to. They're certainly not 411s or anything just below that, but a 336 gear ratio is pretty fantastic for the experience that you really want out of this car. I'm not going to race it. I may track it just for the fun of it on a right day or experience for it. Like at the Vintage Grand Prix, it would be great to drive through the course with this car at moderate speeds and experience. But on the highway, I want a little bit of efficiency and economy, and I also want to be able to get up and go when I need to go in the right gears. And so in that differential ratio, first and second, as my son ColeVette said, is going to be quick, and then third, fourth is going to get you to the faster top end speed and lower the RPM while you're doing so. So in any case, thanks for joining again. It's always a great experience to try to detail the ownership of a vintage sports car.